our leadoff hitter. He was never a leadoff hitter in baseball, but he's our leadoff hitter today. Preston Thorne, former defensive tackle at the University of South Carolina and host of the early game on 107.5. What's up, man?
Yeah, Jamie, even with the new changes that they have for leadoff hitters, I still wouldn't qualify. But definitely back when we played, I was never, ever going to be a leadoff hitter.
I know the even the analytics couldn't move me into that spot now. You know,
Nah,
matter of
no
fact,
thank you.
I hit third virtually my entire life. I was a two-hole guy for a while, and then I ended up hitting third in high school for I guess I guess 3 of the 4 years I played. Analytics now would probably move me into the 8-hole.
For sure. For sure.
Wait a second. Nah, this guy can't hit third. Anyways, man, how are you? We're what are we? 25 days away until kickoff. How about that?
Yeah, it starts to
24.
go. It starts to roll quickly. You feel like, oh, we're just waiting for it to get here, and then all of a sudden it gets here, and then next thing you know, camp starts rolling along. We'll probably be, I'm assuming this weekend because I haven't looked at the schedule, but I'm assuming this weekend we'll probably get a first something or another happening with some pads. We'll probably get a little cracking going
Yeah.
on this weekend, and after that we're rolling.
Yeah, they'll how about this attention to detail, Preston Thorne? They will scrimmage Saturday night at 6:33 p.m.
Nice,
in Williams-Brice
nice.
Stadium. We've asked about that before, and they said no, it's just kind of how we want X number of minutes in this period and X number of minutes in this period and X number of minutes. I'm like, yeah, I hear you, but also you want attention to detail. No, not 6:30, 6:33. I get it. Um, so what is important about a first scrimmage in pre? I'm not calling it fall camp. It's actually the weather's not bad actually right now, but we all know it'll come back to 90 before long. But so it's preseason camp. What is important about scrimmage one in camp?
Ooh, this is an interesting question because I've been thinking about this a lot. Like during the time that I played, I had different positions on the roster during my career, whether it was early in my career, knowing I was going to redshirt or fighting for a backup position, being in position battles, then being kind of named the starter and seeing what that. So I say all that to say it matters differently to different players. But I would say overall for the team, first of all, I'm speaking from a fan perspective. We do not want to hear that the offense is ahead of the defense on your first scrimmage.
Mm,
We don't want to hear that.
okay.
Y'all, if you don't know me, I'm Preston. What's up? I'm a defensive guy. Uh, that being said, offense is harder to install than defense.
Okay.
And so in your early scrimmages, the defenses are going to be flying around. Hopefully, that's what you want to hear. And the defense and the offense, even with our great leader at quarterback, it's still going to take a while to develop. So as a fan, if you hear rumblings or if you hear from sources that the defense dominated the first scrimmage, that would not be a reason to panic, in my opinion.
Okay. Which is interesting because this has come up around here before. This exact time last year, our buddy John Strickland was out. He had gone out and watched them scrimmage, and he said the defense is outstanding, and they are way ahead of the offense, and pointed out that was a good sign. It turned out to be a great sign. Obviously, last year's defense was historic, but fast forward a year, and there's the general thought that because they've had to replace, especially so many guys in the middle of that defense, as you well know, Kyle Kennard didn't play in the middle, but they had to replace him too, obviously, and that you return a guy who maybe is a Heisman Trophy candidate, and you return a bunch of offensive linemen, that the offense, should have caught up. So, what you mentioned, the install is easier for defense than it is for offense. What goes into that on the offensive side of the football? Like what is the timetable in which it should be churning and starting to click a little bit more?
Well, maybe even install wasn't the proper word, but its execution is just much more difficult on offense because there's so many more moving parts. You hear coaches say all the time, if one player messes up on defense, there's still 10 other guys that can rally to the ball and make a play. But on offense, listen, I'm a defense guy. I hate to say this out loud, but on offense, it really does take all 11. And if one dude breaks down, it could blow up an otherwise perfect play.
Yeah.
Everything could be right. The snap could be right. The handoff could be right. And a dude on the backside misses his cutoff block, and somebody blows up the play. And as a fan, we don't really know what's happening. It looks as if the whole offense is in disarray, but really it was just one guy. And so in order to get all of that working at the same time, repetitively over and over again, it just takes a while. And so that's the thing. It's just going to be repetitions. They'll do the reps and they'll get better and better. But in the first scrimmage, if you do hear that it was sloppy or that it was this or that, it's okay in my opinion.
And then the flip side of that, if you hear, well, the offense lit up the night skies of Williams-Brice Stadium, what does that mean?
That's bad news.
Okay.
That's bad. Just because from a defensive perspective, it's almost impossible to catch up from that. Because if you're hearing that the offense was lighting up the night skies, then that means that you weren't tackling well, you weren't running to the ball, you weren't a lot of those things that necessarily can't be corrected. Now, what you might hear is that the offense had a couple of big plays, and that might be because of misalignment or misassignment. Somebody blew a gasket because they're trying to figure out the coverages. That's okay. But if you're hearing sources coming around saying like, man, yeah, the offense was just consistently picking up 5, 6, 8 yards a pop, that would be a little bit concerning to me. So a couple of big plays, cool, no problem. It's probably a misassignment or misalignment. But if you're hearing that if the defense is just getting basically run through, especially early, that's not something that I don't think you can catch up from.
Where do you think this defense is, Preston? Just out of curiosity. You know what it's like to lose leadership, talent to the NFL. And they have athletes. We know that. We know they have football players. But they also have new faces out there in new places, so to speak. Where do you think they are?
It's a great question. I haven't read the article, but I saw the headline from the Post and Courier, and it was talking to Nick Barrett, and Nick was saying essentially that he watched that last defense, but he wasn't involved in that defense as far as playing it. And I think that's probably the attitude that a lot of those guys have. Is they've seen what I would argue was one of the better defenses in our history. They saw them play, but now they have to go out there and execute it. And so it's a little bit of a different mindset. It's a different mindset when you don't have the security blankets of all of that NFL talent around you, knowing those guys can make plays. If you're a linebacker and you know that if you miss a tackle, Nick Emmenwara is going to come in and clean it up and erase any problems that you made, or you could put that on down the line. So it's a little bit of a different mindset that they're going to have, that they have to prove themselves. And to be honest, I would probably need to see. I haven't seen them with my eyes. I hear talent-wise, I don't think we should have an issue.
No.
So I think that's something baseline talent-wise we should be fine. Are they going to have the attitude that the last year's defense had? Because Jamie, you remember last year, and I'm guilty of it. But they were talking like Devo and Nick. They were talking like, yeah, we're going to be historical. We're going to put up donuts. And I was like, hey, calm down, right? I was like, I don't know about all that. And lo and behold, they actually did it. And so I want to see what the attitude towards this defense will be. Will they be a brash type of defense? Will they be workman-like type of defense? I don't know that yet. So that's what I'm more waiting to see.
So it's safe to say that maybe talent, we know they're talented. It's safe to say that maybe I don't want to call it a concern because I'm not sure that it is a concern. I don't think that'd be I think that'd be a poor choice of wording here, but maybe a focal point, an interest point, if you will, of that side of the ball beginning now through when we get to see them in Atlanta is leadership. And who is it, and what is the makeup of that leader? Because generally, if that's your leader and this is their makeup, everybody else kind of falls in line, right?
You think about each level on last year's defense, and I know we keep harping on last year's defense, but they were so good. But each level had a different brand of leadership that they had provided. You think up front, you had uh, you had quiet, stable leadership in Boogie and Tonka, guys who had been through the fire, that had been there for a long time. Then right behind them, you're gonna have Debo, who is I would assume just from his actions was like the ringleader, the guy that was probably a verbal leader, the guy who might have to make some corrections if things needed to be corrected on the team. He probably was the guy that did it. Then you had Demetrius, an old vet, very solid and stable. On back to the secondary, so they had a bunch of dudes who led in different ways, but they all came together. And that's what this team is starting to. Who's going to be the first to step in line on the drills? Who's going to tell the team that that's not good enough? Let's do it again. Who's going to be the person that says, "Nah, coach, we got it. We can handle this a different way." That's all something that they're having to learn about each other, learn about themselves, and learn about the coaches. And that's what I assume this defense is working on during practice.
This would be a very arguable point that I'm going to say here, but I'll make it. I could, based on what I'm hearing from you, and I don't disagree with anything that you've been saying at all. I could actually make an argument that as right now, with where they are right now, I'm not saying in October or November, but right now, the most difficult guy to replace on the defense is Debo Williams, because of what you just said. Everybody will hear that and they'll go, well, I don't know. TJ Sanders is a draft pick. He's in the NFL. Demetrius Knight, Kyle Kennard, all these guys are probably going to start this year as rookies, and so on and so forth. Tonka, you name it. But there's a lot that when you sit in row 30 or row 12 or in the upper deck or wherever, you might be seeing it, but you're not hearing it. And Debo Williams talks for 4 straight quarters, or at least he used to. And I feel like my understanding of Debo Williams as a player, Preston, was whoever was out there with him, he knew exactly where they were supposed to be and what they were supposed to be doing. Now, the linebacking core that they're going to put out onto the field beginning this weekend is also arguably maybe the most athletic linebacking core that they've had in maybe ever. I don't know. I mean, they're very athletic and very talented, all of them. The transfers, the young guys, Fred Johnson, potential superstar. But do they have that? Is that there? Have they grown into that yet? And you have to grow into that, right? Like, it's not just there. More reps, more confidence, that comes. So maybe watching that group and see who kind of emerges as a leader from the middle of the defense might be a key.
Yeah, I maybe I've talked myself into that, but as you know, when that wasn't who Debo was when he first got here.
No,
He still, I mean, he had those things inside of him, but that he wasn't expressing all those things to this level until he took some time to grow with repetitions and going through the fire a little bit. That is all part of the growing and maturation process. So a lot of times I know we really focus on the Excel sheet or the stats or the numbers and all those types of things, but there is a glue component that has to be a part of any great team, defenses specifically, because there's a lot of communication that needs to happen. There's a lot of I got your back, you got mine type of things that needs to happen. And that's something that has to take time to develop. And also a lot of trust that needs to happen on defense. I have to trust to be able to know that you're doing your job so I can do mine. I don't have to try and play hero ball and jump into the next gap because I'm not sure if you're going to cover. I need to know that you're going to do your job so I can do mine, and then it's all going to provide a collective. That takes a little bit of time. That takes development during camp, and that takes people seeing who their steps was. And to your point, Jamie, the leader of a team, of a defense, of an offense, whatever, it can be the best player, but it's not always the best player. Sometimes it's just the leader who everybody looks to, and you know that from being on several different teams. And so that's a great point that you brought up about Debo.
Athletessandartists.com. If you would like to better the lives of your children, you can get Preston and Langston to your school, and you can order books. My kids have them. Just a Chicken, is now that they can read, then they're starting to understand it. It's probably the coolest children's book ever, and it's all about what is a Gamecock. And that's what we all are. And if you read it, you'll find out what a Gamecock actually is. Towards the end, it gives you goosebumps, as a matter of fact. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
We talked to Coach Beamer on Monday, and I asked him a question that he probably hasn't been asked. And I don't blame anybody for not asking him this question, but I had to word it a little bit differently because it's kind of a tough question to ask, Preston. And essentially what I asked him was, you had to fire your offensive coordinator a few years ago because things just weren't working, and go hire another guy. And only a couple of seasons ago, there were a lot of ups and downs defensively from the beginning of his career as the head coach at South Carolina, really until about the ninth ball game in 2023. There were some games that were essentially over in the first quarter. I mean, there were some tough moments. Now, they had some nice defensive performances, but they had some tough moments. And, I mean, you've been on the air a while. You remember it. There were a lot of people that weren't very thrilled with Clayton White. And what is this guy still doing here? He's not consistent. You never know what we're going to get. They haven't recruited well. They're not coached well, whatever. People had all sorts of things to say. Some of them had merit. Some of them didn't. But Shane Beamer stuck with his guy. And here we are. We're having a very different conversation in 2025. We're not wondering, do they have the players? We know that those guys exist. It's not like some years where it's like, I don't know who they're going to play there. They just don't have anybody. We're having a totally different conversation of, well, which one of these guys is going to win the job and who's going to step up and lead this thing. It does. Coach Burr used to say everything happens for a reason, and timing is everything, and this, that, and the other. It does make you think, if a young head coach in Shane Beamer wanted to throw a sacrificial lamb out there, essentially to save face for himself and say, well, it wasn't my fault. I just got to go get a new DC. Where would this group be now? And I don't think they'd be anywhere near where they are. The last 16 games, second in the league in points per game allowed, 15.44. That's second only to Ole Miss in the last 16 ball games that they've played in. So kudos to him for standing by his guy and saying, no, this is my defensive coordinator. But it's interesting to go back and think about that, right? If he made a kind of a freak out move and said, all right, well, I'm going to get rid of him because it's just not consistent enough around here, not good enough, I'm not so sure that here in 2025 we would have the expectations we've got.
Yeah, that would have been very easy to do. It would have been a very easy thing for him to do it. I think, Jamie, what we forget is that coaches go through development processes also. You develop in everything that you're attempting to do. And just like a player, it feels like things have clicked for Clayton. He had flashes. There were flashes of them doing some really cool things on defense. There were flashes of them play well, but you hit on it. There was inconsistencies, and whether that was because of talent or scheme. I do remember one specific game where Clayton would probably tell you, like, he just got beat up scheme-wise. And it was against Arkansas 2 or 3 years ago. And they just beat him up scheme-wise, and there was nothing that they could do. They didn't make the adjustments. It happens to everybody. That being said, we haven't seen that, like you said, in the last 16 games. And as a fan, when your defense, when you feel like your defense can go out there and give you a shot against anybody that they play against, that's a really solid feeling. In fact, when you think about this past year, obviously they had talent everywhere and they were great, but there was really only one game, and I would say Missouri, where anybody would have to ask any type of scheme questions or anything like that. And Missouri, and guess what? Hey, I know, again, I don't like to say this out loud, but Drink is a dude. Drink can call him with the best of them. And so that was a matchup that was happening. But I think for Shane, it was really important to, we always hear coaches talk about trusting the process and believing in your process. I think Shane really showed that he believed in his process, believed in his guy, and the dividends are paying off. Now we're having a different conversation. Now we're talking about, oh man, I hope we can keep Clayton after this year. Yeah. And that's a good conversation to have, because if he's on people's hot boards, that means he did well here.
Oh man, there's no doubt. I mean, the defensive coaching staff, if you ask me, is A plus plus. I mean, Darren Usher, we were talking to Darren a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the defensive tackles. I know that you and I just discussed them not long ago here. And he said they hear it. They're not naive. They're listening to everybody, the outside world saying, well, you got to replace this guy and you got to replace. They hear it. They know what's being said, and it's fueling them. They enjoy that. That's a part of it. And, I think you said this a couple of weeks ago when you were on here with me. We're starting to get – because I've always been of the belief as a football guy, defense starts up front in the middle, period, the end. If you don't have it there, you probably don't have it. So, you got to have it there, and obviously that's the position you played. You know that as well as anybody. But now this group, after a couple of years, is taking on the personality of Travian Robertson. I don't know that there's a better personality to take on at that position. You can speak on that as well as anybody.
Yeah, man. I'll say it. I said it once. I say it again. I keep saying it, man. Travian is the direct disciple of the Law Dog, right? He's a direct disciple of Brad Lloyd, and that type of coaching, Brad is obviously recognized as one of the industry greats, the industry leader, and to have somebody who studied under that, played under that, had him as a mentor, you know what type of player he is creating in those rooms. And I would imagine that those players were in for a ultimate shock when he first came into that room and started implementing the things that he wanted to see from a defense, because you could see a very stark contrast between the way that the interior is playing now and the way they played on earlier staffs, for sure.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. Yeah, is that kind of a break it down, build it back up type method with what he?
I don't know if it's a break it down, build it back up, but it's just more so like, hey man, we're not doing that. We don't do things like this. This is how we do things. If you thought that was good enough, it's not going to be. If you want to be in this room, you're going to have to get up to a certain standard of toughness, a certain standard of execution, and eventually the players start to take on that attitude.
Okay. I know I'm going to get you out of here in less than 2 minutes, but I just want to ask you just a general question. We've seen enough of Coach Beamer now in the preseason, starting clearly with SEC Media Days, which, by the way, I had the over on him breaking his opening statement record of 17 and a half minutes, and he went under. I think he was under by 2 minutes. I meant to tell him that the other day. Bravo. Well done, and not going over the 17-minute mark. But he's entering year 5 as a head coach. Just out of curiosity, I mean, he played for Lou, front row seat to Coach Spurrier, Muschamp. All these guys came in with bukus of experience as head coaches. I know Muschamp didn't go well at Florida, but he had been a head coach before. So just in watching Shane Beamer, how he handles the media, how he handles questions, his persona, everything about him, how would you kind of compare and contrast the head man in year 5 versus the head man in year 1 or year 2 entering the season?
I mean, I think the only word is maturation. Our little Shane is growing up. Our little Shaney Poo is growing up. He came in there wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, and full of enthusiasm, which he still has, but it's tempered and it's mature, and it's a little bit. I was always a big fan of, that's why I always thought that the Pete Limbo hire was such a great hire, because it was somebody who could show Shane the ropes, maybe be another set of eyes and ears for him. And Shane now has developed and matured into who he wanted to be as a coach. Jamie, the thing, like when I was teaching, you don't really become a teacher or really any profession until like year 4 or 5, because the first couple years you're just copying who you thought was a good teacher. So you're just copying them. You're trying to figure out who you are. How do I respond to this? What are my real true values as a coach? And I think Shane is now entering that thing where he knows he's confident in himself. He knows his system can be successful, and he's putting that forward. So I would say, if I had to sum it up in a word, I would say just there's a level of maturity and a quiet confidence that I think he's earned, especially after the last season.
Yeah, I think so too. He's also, you can take these stats to the early game if you'd like. No credit needed. It is all in the media guide. including this year for Coach Beamer. He has now on his staff, after hiring Jeff Collins, 24 years of collegiate head coaching experience between him, Sean Elliott, Mike Fury, Mike Shula, and Jeff Collins, and NFL experience, 112 years of coaching experience in the NFL. The most notable would be Mike Shula, Joe DeCamillis, and Chip Morton, of course, spent 27 years as a strength guy in the National Football League. And this strength program under Luke Day is outstanding, as we all well know. It's pretty good to have that type of group around you to lean on something. You never have seen everything. And when you see something you haven't seen, more than likely one of those guys probably has once it comes up. We'll let you run, man. Thank you so much for your time. Obviously, I miss being on with you on Monday mornings on the early game, but that's okay. We're moving on in life, and we're giving back via this program now. So we'll continue this.
And now we don't have to have any commercial breaks to stop the flow. So this is great. I love to get a chance to rap with you, James. This is awesome.
We don't have Gunner going, yeah. Hey, we got to get a break. We'll be right back. Okay. Sorry, Bill. All right. I'll catch you soon. For anybody wondering, you will see a lot more of Preston Thorne on here, and I hope you'll like it. Thanks, buddy.